What's up, disc golfers? Disc Golf Chris here. We've had a couple of you ask about an in the bag, so I finally got my bag set up this year, so I'm comfortable telling you what I've got in my bag. So, quick background on my bag. I played with about 9 discs for about between a 7 and 10 year period, the same 9 discs the whole time, and then probably about 3 years ago, I went through a couple of serious injuries that caused me to completely change my form, and as a result, I've had to completely redesign my bag. So this is a brand new designed bag, and the way I designed it was picking about 3 or 4 core discs that I knew I had to have in my bag, and then I just piled discs in around them that I knew threw well for me, and then about once every week or every 2 weeks I would pull out a disc that I either wasn't throwing well or that I simply didn't use, and I've come to a pretty solid bag so far. So start out with my minis. I carry these 2 minis every time, Big Daddy and Zen Disc Golf. Big Daddy, I've been active in their group, pretty awesome, positive group, and then Zen Disc Golf, of course, that's how we got our start with Patrick and the Zen Disc Golf podcast, which is now the Just Throw podcast, so shout out to those guys. Oh, and don't forget, Patrick's got a new book out, Discs and Zen, so better check that out if you haven't yet. So I'll go ahead and start with my putters. I've got Rico's from Cast are my main putters. I like Rico's because they're low profile and they're small diameter and they've got moderate glide, and especially I've got small hands. They've got a puddle top, so they give me a good grip with my small hands. I don't like big profile putters. Moderate glide helps keep these under control. And next I have, this is the most recent addition to my bag. It's an RPM Discs 2E. This is an understable putter, but it's a very fast putter with high glide, so within 100 feet it actually acts just like a stable putter, and then when I use it for approaches it's pretty understable, but I can get this disc to travel a long distance without much effort because of the amount of glide that's on it. So next I've got a couple of Bergs. These are from Castoplast as well. The Bergs, again, they're small diameter. I know a few people that putt with them, but I don't putt with the Bergs. I use them for approaches. The Bergs have extreme puddle tops. I don't know if you can see it from there. Blunt nose and puddle tops, which allow for a great grip, and they also have very low glide, extremely low glide, and they're one of the slowest discs on the market, so they're very controllable. I can put a lot of power on them. They'll go very straight. Now the K3 Berg is their base plastic, and this is one of the best base plastics I've ever thrown. K3 Berg breaks in and it's a little less stable, and the K2 Berg is a premium plastic. It's almost like a gummy champion, but it's a little bit gummier, but it's also a little bit more consistent. So it gets a nice smooth release, and this one is more overstable than the K3. I can get it to go dead straight, but it's got a decent fade at the end that's predictable. I also have a K1 Berg, but I don't throw that one in my bag. It's that one's a little bit more overstable. Next, I've got a Buzz OS, and this is probably the most reliable, most consistent disc in my bag. This one is, I can throw it dead straight and it fades hard, or I can put it on hyzers. I like the Buzz OS in the wind. This is one of the best wind discs, especially mid-range, that I've ever thrown, which is why it is in my bag, and it's been in my bag for a while, and I don't think this is coming out anytime soon. Along with the Buzz OS, I've got an EMAC Truth. Now, there is some overlap between the EMAC Truth and the Buzz OS, but the EMAC Truth has a little bit more glide, so I can get it to fly a little further, and it's also got some turns, so this is my workable mid-range for when I need to throw S-curves or make shape my shots. It's got a fairly beefy nose, considering that it's a mid-range. It's almost shaped like a fairway, and there's a lot of overlap between fairways, so I don't actually have a lot of fairway drivers because of this EMAC Truth, but phenomenal disc. I also have a Patriot. Again, there's a little bit of overlap with the EMAC Truth. The Patriot is understable fairway driver, and this one is a 167 grams, so it's lighter weight, and this I use for finesse shots, especially long and hyzers. The cool thing about the Patriot, this is from Legacy. This, I believe, it's actually the old leopard mold, the pre-berry leopard mold, which they don't make anymore. For anyone that's thrown leopards, you might know this. The pre-berry leopards were special because you could throw them on long anhyzers, and they would fade out gently and continue on that anhyzer. Newer leopards have just a little bit more fade on them, and it's harder to get them to get that nice smooth anhyzer. So these these Patriots with that old leopard mold they're money, and this I still need to work on my finesse a little bit, but this is an excellent finesse disc. It brings me to my Undertakers. I carry two Undertakers. If you've read our Undertaker review, you might know when the Undertaker first came out, I wasn't a big fan of it, but I continued throwing it. And the more I threw it, the more I learned to love it. And it took about 7 or 8 months, and I started thinking, hey, this is kind of a neat disc. And then about 4 or 5 months later, it ended up in my bag, and this is now my go-to fairway driver. I can throw it pretty much dead straight, consistent fade. It's also workable. Slight anhyzers, I can throw some great hyzers with it. The difference between these two is Z Flex is a little bit less stable, so I can get a little more of a turn on it. But then the Elite Z, I can throw it a little bit harder. They're excellent precision fairway drivers. Then I also have another fairly new disc, the Streamline Discs Trace. Streamline Discs just came out, and this is one of their first molds. I ended up adding the Trace because I can get some incredible distance with very little power. The Trace has great glide on it. The Trace is another disc that I can throw pretty darn straight for a long ways with some predictable fade. The nice thing about the Trace is it's very workable. This is not my main, this isn't my go-to distance driver, but especially when I'm fatigued at the end of the round, or if I need a little bit of a tight line without much fade, I'll go to the Trace and get some excellent glide and a little bit more turn on it when I don't want to chance a hard skip. And you'll see why when I take these out. These are my crushes. The Crush is my go-to driver. And if you've thrown a Crush before, you know it's very overstable, and it has a big skip at the end quite often, and it's extremely reliable and extremely consistent, but especially on those long throws, if it fades hard, sometimes it's harder to control that fade. So while I typically throw this most of the time, Trace is a good complement. I have 3 Crushes, and the reason Crush is my main disc is, like I said, it's consistent, reliable. I can put a lot of force on it. Now, the Crush has just a little bit of turn on it. I think like a minus 0.5, or according to Inbounds, it's something like a minus 4%. So just a little bit of turn, which helps it stay workable. So I can put it on slight anhyzers. I can put it on deadly straight shots. My primary is an ESP Crush, which is, I think, 167 to 169 grams, so a little bit lighter, get a little bit more distance on it, a little more control. But I also have an Elite Z Crush that is max weight and is more overstable. So I throw this one for the wind shots, or when I need a little bit more hook, or if I need a big skip, this is the one I use. And I also have a Pro D Crush. I don't throw as often, but this one I can throw with a little bit more finesse. If I need to lighten up on my power, I can throw this one and still get a pretty good distance, reliable and straight. This one also provides superior grip. So if it's raining or if it's in the winter, I'll throw this one quite often. Other cool thing about this Pro D Crush is I got, I think, 4 of these I got for $3 each on eBay. So these are my water discs if I'm taking them out along a river. Then I have one more. There's a lot of overlap. This is my Prodigy D1. A lot of overlap with the Crush because, again, it's very overstable, fast disc. Difference is this one hardly flips up at all. I can put an awful lot of power on it, and it also turns down better. So if I'm looking for a big sky hyzer bomb, the D1's the disc that'll do it, because instead of flipping up and fading out, it'll go up and cut down with more precision. The other cool thing about this one is this Prodigy disc I won before the Puttheads even started blogging. I won this from a Will Schustrick giveaway, I think on Instagram. And then a few months later, Rodney drove down to Indiana for a Will Schustrick driving clinic, and he took this disc and got it signed by Will. So I've got a Schustrick signature up here, and while it might be worth some money, I love collecting discs, but not for the monetary value. I'd rather keep them in my bag. So I continue to throw this one, and this is very, very reliable disc. Not quite as much distance as my Crush, but it's excellent overstable disc. And along that note, I actually have this Buzz OS is a first run, and so is this Undertaker. And then, of course, the Crush is out of print. So And then the trace is also a first run, so I actually have a lot of first run and collectible discs in here. And actually, I think this Rico is a second run. We've got some what could be considered valuable discs, but I like throwing them anyway. So last disc, this is my Opto blister from Lat 64. The blister is my maximum distance driver. It's got a little bit more turn than what the flight ratings say. So that extra turn helps me get some great distance on it. Now, because of the turn and the speed, it's not nearly as controllable as something like my Crush, so I don't reach for this nearly as often. Usually when we have a wide open fairway, or when I have a tailwind especially, is when I pull out my ballista. But it's an excellent disc for getting some extra distance. And this one's cool because it's a double stamp. It's got a green stamp and an orange stamp, and when you put them upside down together, looks like an eyeball in the middle. So it's a fun one. So those are all my discs. The bag that I'm carrying right now is an Innova backpack bag. It's held up pretty well, but it's falling apart, so I might have to get a new one soon. But I've never been too particular about my bag, so I think that's about it. Oh, I like to wear this hat. This is my Mind Body Disc hat. Tim from Mind Body Disc taught us a lot, so you gotta make sure you're dressed well out there on the course. So I think that's it. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget, just throw.